Hello friends. Welcome to Zube Stories, where every story hides a little secret just waiting for you. Are you ready for a ride? Settle in, watch gracefully, and let the magic unfold. Don't forget to subscribe and share, because some stories are too good to keep to yourself. Elena Reyes woke before dawn every single day, usually with a sense of resigned determination settling heavily on her shoulders. Today was no different. She swung her feet over the edge of the small bed tucked away in the Sterling Estate's cramped attic room, her room, and inhaled the chilly morning air. She could hear the distant hum of the staff floor coming to life with clinking pans and subdued footsteps. While the rest of the Sterling household might still be asleep or lazily preparing to rise at their leisure, Elena had no such luxury. 27 years old, slender but strong, and sporting calloused hands from constantly tidying up after Bianca Sterling's two rambunctious children, Elena had grown used to her lifestyle. At 5 in the morning, she would hurry to make sure the children's schedules were organized, lunches packed, and every item they needed for the day laid out. She combed her wavy dark hair into a neat ponytail, one that she redid 5 times until there were no loose strands. Neatness was a must, as Bianca Sterling despised any hint of imperfection. The Sterling mansion was a grand sight with its sweeping staircases, glistening marble floors, and elaborate chandeliers. Expensive artwork lined the walls, abstract sculptures, paintings by famous masters, and ornate vases perched on pillars. Sometimes, Elena felt like she lived in a museum filled with cold, unfeeling pieces. Everything had its place, everyone had their place. Hers was among the invisible workers. Elena tiptoed downstairs, hoping to avoid an encounter with Bianca for as long as possible. Bianca Sterling was a socialite with a penchant for drama, especially when it provided her an audience. If she found a speck of dust on the banister or a hair out of place, it became a grand performance of her suffering at the hands of incompetent staff. Elena had learned early on to keep her head down, and her tasks completed quietly and efficiently. Inside the children's playroom, Elena found the usual chaos. Toys littered the floor like a minefield. The bright pink plastic of a dollhouse jutted out near the doorway, dangerously close to tripping anyone who entered. 10-year-old Simone Sterling was nestled in a massive beanbag, eyes glued to her tablet. Her younger brother, 6-year-old Teddy, was building a block tower, except he had decided that each block needed to be lobbed across the room first. Simone, Elena greeted softly, bending down to pick up a stray stuffed bunny. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" Simone didn't look up from her tablet. She was absorbed in a cartoon full of glittering animation and chirpy voices. Elena didn't press. She was used to her quiet greetings disappearing into the air. Gently, she scooted over to Teddy, dodging a flying block that whizzed past her shoulder. "Teddy, let's not throw the blocks, sweetheart. We don't want to break anything, do we?" He blinked up at her, mischief dancing in his brown eyes. "I wasn't throwing them at anything, just the air." Elena mustered her usual patient smile. "I understand. But I want you to be careful." She picked up the scattered blocks and set them beside him. "Now, how about we build that tower tall and steady?" She helped Teddy stack the blocks until a relatively stable tower rose above them. Moments like these gave Elena a small sense of satisfaction. Though the Sterlings rarely acknowledged her efforts, seeing Teddy's eyes light up when he managed to balance the final piece was rewarding in its own small, precious way. When the clock read 6:30 a.m., Elena guided them out of the playroom to prepare for breakfast. Another day, another invisible performance. She got them into neat outfits, Simone in a ruffled blouse and Teddy in a tiny suit that he hated wearing. Bianca liked her children to look like miniature models. Elena complied without protest, knowing full well that Bianca's wrath would descend upon her if she allowed the kids to run around in comfortable pajamas past 8 o'clock. "Mommy, where's my dress with the bows?" Simone whined, finally looking up from her tablet as Elena tried to coax her into the blouse. "It's in the laundry, Miss Simone," Elena responded as calmly as she could. "But I want it now," Simone persisted, stomping her little foot. "Elena," Bianca's sharp voice sliced through the tension. She entered the children's bedroom in a cloud of overpowering perfume. Diamond studs glittered on her ears, and an elegant silk robe clung to her slender form. "What's this nonsense about Simone's dress still being in the laundry? You know perfectly well she needs that for tomorrow's tea party. Are you telling me it isn't ready?" I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling, Elena murmured, her pulse quickening. Bianca waved a dismissive hand. I don't want your excuses. Just have it ready. If you can't manage even this simple task, I'll have no choice but to find a more competent nanny. Understood? Yes, Mrs. Sterling, Elena replied, bowing her head. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, but she forced her emotions down. Bianca smirked. It was a look Elena knew well. Bianca basked in her power, enjoying the knowledge that any threat of dismissal sent fear into Elena's heart. She didn't realize that fear wasn't just about losing a job. Elena needed every paycheck she could get for her younger brother, Carlos, who lived in a smaller, humbler apartment on the other side of town. Carlos was sick, and medical bills piled up every month. A job in the Sterling household, though grueling, paid well enough for Elena to help her brother survive. When Bianca left, Simone huffed and sat on the edge of her bed, arms folded. Teddy remained silent, but gave Elena a small, sympathetic look. The children were used to their mother's outbursts. Though they didn't necessarily pity Elena, there was a fleeting understanding in Teddy's eyes that not everything in this house was fair. With the children's wardrobes settled for the day, Elena led them down to breakfast. The dining room was lavish, crystal chandeliers, a glossy mahogany table, and plush dining chairs that cost more than some people's cars. The chef had laid out a breakfast of fresh fruit, pastries, and mini quiches still steaming from the oven. Elena didn't dare take a seat. She stood off to the side as Simone and Teddy began eating. Bianca, now dressed in a crisp white designer suit, strolled in, phone in one hand, cappuccino in the other. She spoke rapidly about her social calendar, rattling off events she might or might not attend, big charity galas, and brunches with other socialites. Elena tuned out the specifics, focusing instead on how to manage the children's schedule around Bianca's demands. Her mind wandered to her brother, Carlos. A year younger than her, he had once been an aspiring chef, with dreams of opening his own restaurant. That dream was halted by a sudden illness that left him weak and reliant on expensive medication. Elena had moved to the city, desperate to find a job that could cover his treatments. Through a stroke of fate or misfortune, she had stumbled upon an opening in the Sterling household. Every day, she thought about how to help Carlos regain his health, even if it meant swallowing every bitter insult from Bianca. As the morning progressed, Bianca's sharp voice demanded Elena's attention again. "Nanny, I have an errand for you today," she began, strolling around the table. "I need you to pick up some items for me before the upcoming Eastwood Charity Ball." Elena nodded, mentally bracing. "Yes, Mrs. Sterling. What do you need?" Bianca rattled off a list of designer pickups, shoes from one boutique, a custom necklace from another. Then, in a flippant tone, she added, "Oh, and you can drop off my RSVP for the Eastwood Charity Ball. You're good at errands, so I'm sure you can handle it." Elena forced a polite smile. Of course. The Eastwood Charity Ball was legendary in high society circles. It was an annual event that brought together the city's wealthiest families and power players, from celebrities and influential politicians to top-tier heirs and heiresses. Elena's only knowledge of such events came from the gossip columns and the glimpses she caught when Bianca or her friends bragged about who was going, who wore what, and how the entire world would be there. Nathaniel Eastwood, the billionaire who hosted the event, was rarely seen in public otherwise. Rumor had it he was aloof, uninterested in the social scene, but forced to appear at his own family's philanthropic gatherings. Once breakfast concluded, Elena cleaned up the children's plates, ignoring the lumps in her throat. She had done this routine so many times, but the mention of the Eastwood Charity Bowl reminded her again how far away she was from that glittering world. She was the help, and that was that. Mid-morning was her time to organize the children's activities. Simone had piano lessons. Teddy had tutoring. As they busied themselves, Elena busied herself. Whenever a nanny had any free time in a household like this, there was always a new chore waiting. If not, Bianca would invent one. So Elena spent the next few hours either guiding the children through their tasks or running around the estate, ensuring everything was in pristine condition. By late afternoon, Elena was finally able to leave for Bianca's errands. She felt an odd sense of relief stepping off the estate grounds. Outside, the city bustled with life. Towering skyscrapers threw shadows over the sidewalks. Elena maneuvered through the throng of busy pedestrians, hugging her thin sweater close. She passed luxury boutiques and high-end cafes, each radiating wealth. It was a stark reminder that she lived between two worlds, one she served and one she came from. She didn't belong entirely to either. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced down to see a text from Carlos. "Carlos, how are you, sis? You okay over there?" Elena's lips curved into a small smile. He always worried about her. It was part of why she continued to work so hard. He was her only family in the city. "Elena, all good, picking up Bianca's things. Did you take your meds today?" A moment later, his reply came. "Carlos, don't worry about me. I did. Focus on you. Miss you." Her heart squeezed. He was always so selfless, despite being the one who was sick. The sense of responsibility she felt toward him both fueled her and weighed on her. She typed back, "Elena, I will. Miss you too. I'll call later." Stopping first at the high-end designer boutique, Elena picked up the special order shoes for Bianca, a pair of gem-encrusted heels that cost more than Elena's yearly rent. She carried the glossy white shoe boxes carefully as if it were a newborn, terrified of scuffing it or damaging the precious contents. Then she hailed a cab across town to a famous jeweler that catered to the city's elite. She had to sign multiple forms just to collect a custom necklace, a glittering sapphire pendant that would dangle from Bianca's slender neck at the Eastwood Charity Ball. Finally, she went to the Eastwood family offices to drop off the RSVP. The building was imposing, made of steel and glass, towering above the bustling city streets. Marble floors, uniformed security guards, and an aura of power greeted Elena as she stepped into the lobby. She approached the reception desk tentatively. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm here to deliver this RSVP for the Sterling family to the Eastwood Charity Ball." The receptionist, a well-dressed young woman, gave her a polite but detached nod. "Certainly. I'll pass it along." As she handed over the envelope, Elena couldn't help but notice a framed photograph on the desk behind the receptionist. It showed the Eastwood patriarch, Richard Eastwood, and a tall, dark-haired man standing next to him, most likely Nathaniel Eastwood. Elena had never seen a clear photo of him before, and something about the man's stance exuded a sense of quiet confidence. He was handsome in a refined, understated way, with deep-set eyes that seemed to hold secrets. She found herself staring perhaps a moment too long. "Anything else?" the receptionist asked, snapping Elena out of her reverie. Elena blushed, shaking her head. "No, that's all. Thank you." The rest of her day went by in a blur. She returned to the Sterling mansion, carefully placed Bianca's items in her dressing room, and then darted to pick up the children from their activities. By dinner time, she was exhausted. Yet, her day wasn't over. Bianca often demanded Elena remain on standby until the children were tucked into bed. By the time Elena climbed up the attic steps to her tiny room, the estate was finally quiet. She flicked on the lone lamp by her bedside, noticing the paint chipping off the walls, the single, small window that offered a view of the garden below, and the single wooden dresser that held her meager collection of clothes. She stretched her aching back, wishing she could afford a more supportive mattress. But she was luckier than some. At least she had a roof over her head. Elena thought about the next day, more of the same. She envisioned waking up early to gather the children's things, Bianca's demands, the daily threats. Perhaps the only novelty was the upcoming Eastwood Charity Ball. Bianca's excitement had been palpable in the house for weeks. Even Simone boasted about it to her school friends, though she wouldn't be attending. The event itself was a swirl of glitz and glamour, and Elena's life was far removed from that extravagance. She had no way of knowing how drastically her world would collide with that realm in the coming days. For now, she drifted off to sleep with a single thought repeating in her mind, "I only exist here as a servant, just a shadow on the wall." Little did she know that soon, her life would be turned upside down by an invitation, a masquerade of identities, and the intense gaze of a man powerful enough to change her destiny forever. Late afternoon sun slanted through the ornate windows of the Sterling mansion, casting elongated shadows across the marble floors. Elena stood in the foyer, carefully balancing a tray of fresh orange juice and biscuits for Bianca. She found Bianca pacing, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp and brimming with excitement. "No, I'm telling you, this is the event of the season," Bianca hissed. Everyone who's anyone is going to be there. The Eastwood Charity Ball is practically a coronation for society's elite. And Nathaniel Eastwood himself will be in attendance. Yes, darling, the Nathaniel Eastwood. Bianca noticed Elena with the tray and motioned for her to wait. She continued, honestly, how often does the Eastwood heir show up for anything public? He's a bit of a recluse, but rumor has it this year he's showing up in all his glory. If that's not a reason to be excited, I don't know what is. Yes, yes. I'll see you there. Ciao. Hanging up, she turned toward Elena, who stood quietly, eyes downcast. You took forever, she scolded. And these biscuits, are they the ones from the new French bakery? Yes, Mrs. Sterling, Elena replied softly. She had stood in line that morning at an upscale bakery downtown just to fetch them. They are the ones you requested. Bianca's lips curled into a half-smile of approval as she reached for one. She took a dainty bite, then a sip of orange juice. Very well. Now, about the ball. Her sharp eyes appraised Elena. I'll need you to do something unusual. Elena waited, mind racing with possibilities. She'd heard rumors in staff quarters about humiliating tasks, from wearing a ridiculous costume to attending some event only to carry Bianca's coat. Bianca's next words made Elena stiffen. You'll be going in my place. The tray nearly slipped from Elena's hands. I'm sorry. What? Oh? Come now, Bianca said, tapping her heeled foot impatiently on the marble. Did I stutter? I'm very busy that evening. A last-minute social trip to St. Bart's came up. It's not my preference to miss the ball, but sometimes a more exclusive invitation overrides the local scene, you understand. She gave a condescending laugh. But I've already responded that I'd attend, so I need someone to go in my stead. You. Elena had never heard something so absurd in her life. Mrs. Sterling, I wouldn't fit in, she stammered. No one would believe I'm you. And besides, I'm just the nanny. Yes, I'm aware of that, Bianca interrupted with a dismissive wave of her hand. But for one night, you'll be me. Nobody is going to look that closely. If they do, I'll say I've changed my hair or lost weight. These high society types only care about designer labels and social media clout. And you will be wearing my dress. My stylist will transform you. Just slip in, smile for a few pictures, make small talk, and slip out. Everyone will think Bianca Sterling was graciously in attendance. Elena's heart thundered in her chest. She felt a swirl of emotions, disbelief, anxiety, and an odd flicker of curiosity. But, she swallowed hard. I don't even know how to act at an event like that. Bianca rolled her eyes. That's the least of your worries. Just say you're feeling unwell if you need to keep conversations short. But remember, I'm paying you to do as I say. She paused, leaning in so close Elena could smell her perfume. Of course, if you're unwilling to be a team player, there's no point in you continuing here, is there? That was the threat, termination. Dismissal from the job she needed so desperately to support Carlos. Bianca knew exactly how to keep Elena in line. The pressure caged her like a trapped bird. I'll do it, Elena said, though her stomach twisted with nerves. Excellent, Bianca crooned, stepping back. This Sunday evening is the ball. My stylist will come tomorrow to measure you for the dress. Don't worry about memoizing a speech or anything. Your presence is the only requirement. She took another dainty sip of juice. Just remember, you're representing me. Don't embarrass me, or you'll regret it. Elena nodded, numb. She watched Bianca glide away, phone already in hand to inform her gossip circle of her cunning plan. Once alone, Elena sank into a nearby chair, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Attend a high society charity ball? Impersonate Bianca Sterling? It sounded like a fairy tale turned nightmare. She never dreamed of going to such an event as a guest, even if it was under someone else's name. That evening, as Elena put the children to bed, she fought to keep her hands from trembling. Simone, half asleep, clutched her stuffed kitten while Teddy stared at Elena with curious eyes. What's wrong with you? Teddy asked bluntly. Elena forced a smile. Nothing, just a bit tired, she said, adjusting his blanket. Are you leaving? He asked, voice small. Mommy was on the phone talking about you going away. Elena's heart skipped. She realized Teddy must have misunderstood. I'm not going away, she whispered gently. I'm just going to, run an errand on Sunday. I'll be back. I always come back, right? He nodded, letting a yawn escape. His eyes drooped, and soon he was lost in dreamland. Elena tucked him in and turned off the lamp. The children's gentle breathing filled the dimly lit room, and for a moment, Elena felt a surge of protectiveness. Whatever happens, I'll keep my job. I'll make sure these children are safe. I'll keep supporting Carlos. She repeated it like a mantra, reminding herself that even bizarre tasks like this ball attendance were necessary for her survival. The next day, Bianca's personal stylist arrived mid-morning, a tall, impeccably dressed man named Gabriel. He swept in like a whirlwind of brand names and fashion criticisms, carrying a garment bag with him. Elena watched uneasily as he laid out a shimmering designer gown on Bianca's bed, the silver fabric catching the light in a way that made it glisten like starlight. "Oh, dear," Gabriel exclaimed, sizing Elena up. "We have quite a bit of work to do, don't we?" Heat crept up Elena's neck. She wasn't entirely sure how to respond. I suppose so." Bianca stood by, watching with an amused smirk. "Make her look like me. Obviously not exactly like me, but enough so nobody doubts who she is." Gabriel clapped his hands. "Right. We'll style her hair in an updo, something glamorous that frames the face but keeps us from seeing too much of it. We'll rely on dramatic makeup, too. Yes, that should help. Big, bold red lips, smoky eyes. We'll also need her posture to scream confidence. That's half the battle." Elena found herself whisked away to an impromptu fitting session. Gabriel measured every inch of her, muttering about alterations. He had her step into the silver gown. With the zipper partially up, she stared at herself in the mirror, scarcely recognizing her reflection. Her arms were trembling, and she felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Stand up straight," Gabriel admonished. "You must carry yourself like a queen, not a housemaid." Elena tried to lift her chin, but her mind filled with doubts. "If I look this different, maybe no one will recognize me as the nanny." A faint spark of relief flickered through her. Maybe, just maybe, she could pull this off without disaster. Bianca approached, circling Elena like a predator. "Good enough," she announced. "Just make sure you don't talk too much. One slip up and everyone will know you're a fraud. You'll answer to me if that happens." Elena swallowed, wishing she could vanish into the floor. But she forced herself to nod. "Yes, Mrs. Sterling." The next few days passed in a blur. Whenever she wasn't tending to the children, Elena was practicing her posture, her smile, and even her Bianca voice. Gabriel taught her a short introduction. "I'm Bianca Sterling, lovely to see you," which she was to repeat with an air of bored sophistication. Elena's stomach twisted with every rehearsal, her fear mounting as Sunday approached. Sunday evening arrived with a mix of tension and anticipation. Outside, the sun dipped behind the skyscrapers, painting the sky a fiery orange. In the Sterling mansion, Elena stood in front of Bianca's grand vanity mirror, while Gabriel put the finishing touches on her hair. He had styled it in a sleek updo, swirling strands around a glittering hairpin that matched the gown. Her makeup was bold, dark eyeliner that made her brown eyes smoky and mysterious, a deep crimson lipstick that seemed to redefine the shape of her lips. She glanced sideways at her reflection, hardly recognizing herself. Is that really me?" she whispered, voice trembling. Gabriel smirked, patting her shoulder. "My dear, that's the Bianca you need to be tonight." Bianca herself was nowhere to be found, already en route to her private jet, or so the staff whispered. She had left a note reminding Elena of the consequences if she screwed up. Somehow, that note felt more threatening than any face-to-face scolding Bianca had given her before. Elena slipped her feet into the gem-encrusted heels, purchased for Bianca specifically for this ball. The entire outfit felt like wearing an alien skin. The chiffon shawl brushed against her shoulders, and expensive perfume lingered in the air. She took a deep breath. This was it. A sleek black town car arrived at the estate's front entrance. Gabriel guided her down the steps, the long gown trailing behind in a silver shimmer. The driver opened the door, and Elena eased herself into the plush leather seat, her heart pounding wildly. She gazed out the tinted window as they drove toward the Grand Hotel ballroom. Neon lights and the city skyline blurred together, a dizzying array of color against the night sky. The car finally pulled up to the red carpet area, where paparazzi flashes lit the entrance like strobes. Elena's hands trembled, heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Gabriel patted her shoulder once more. Remember, shoulders back, chin up, and minimal talking. Elena swallowed and nodded. She stepped out of the car, and immediately, cameras clicked furiously. Shouts of "Over here, Bianca!" rang out as reporters and photographers clamored for a shot. Elena fought the urge to duck her head. Instead, she forced her best approximation of a cool smile and breezed forward, letting the cameras capture her. It felt surreal, as if she was stepping into someone else's life, which, of course, she literally was. Inside the opulent ballroom, everything sparkled. Chandeliers dripped with crystals, round tables were adorned with breathtaking floral arrangements, and a live string quartet played softly in a corner. The city's elite glided across the marble floors, air-kissing and chattering in hushed, polished tones. Waiters in crisp uniforms offered champagne flutes and delectable canapes. Elena's heart fluttered with both wonder and terror. "I can't let them see who I really am." She repeated Gabriel's instructions, shoulders back, chin high. She took a flute of champagne when a waiter passed, more for something to do with her hands than any desire to drink. All around her, people in glittering gowns and tailored suits shared gossip, laughed elegantly, and acknowledged her with polite smiles. To her astonishment, some recognized the Bianca Sterling facade, greeting her with subdued enthusiasm. A tall blonde socialite with an impressive diamond necklace drifted over. "Bianca, darling," she drawled, leaning in for the obligatory air kiss. "How stunning you look tonight. That gown is to die for." "Thank you," Elena managed in a hushed voice, giving the best imitation of Bianca's subtle eye-roll lace tone. She prayed the woman wouldn't engage in deeper conversation. But before the socialite could continue, the crowd's attention shifted. A ripple of excitement passed through the room, like an electric current. Heads turned toward the entrance. Elena followed their gaze, and saw a tall, dark-haired man stepping into the ballroom with effortless poise, flanked by a few distinguished individuals. Her heart stuttered. She didn't need anyone to tell her who he was. This had to be Nathaniel Eastwood. There was a quiet authority in the way he moved, as though he were above this crowd and yet obligated to be among them. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, accentuating his broad shoulders. Sharp angles defined his face, a strong jaw, high cheekbones, and a subtle intensity in his dark eyes that hinted at guarded secrets. Within moments, whispers surged around the room. "That's Nathaniel Eastwood, right? It's rare to see him at these events. Even more handsome in person." Elena's cheeks warmed. She suddenly felt an irrational urge to shrink behind the nearest column. What if he notices me? What if he asks about something I can't answer? But as soon as he stepped into the center of the room, he politely nodded greetings to those who approached. When his gaze casually swept the crowd, it snagged on Elena. A fleeting flash of curiosity danced across his eyes. Just a second, maybe less. But she felt it like a jolt of electricity. She tore her gaze away. "Don't stare. Don't give yourself away." She focused on sipping her champagne, the bubbles tickling her nose. Yet, her heart drummed painfully in her chest. He looked at me. She couldn't place why it made her feel so shaken. Was it fear of being exposed, or was it something else? A moment later, a middle-aged woman wearing a glittering emerald necklace approached her. "Bianca Sterling, my dear, how nice to see you," she said, her voice oozing social nicety. Elena recognized her from a gossip magazine as a major donor to the Eastwood Foundation. "Yes, lovely," Elena murmured, remembering to keep her responses vague but polite. "It's been quite a while." "Too long," the woman replied, waving her hand. She launched into a story about her philanthropic ventures, but Elena barely heard. Her mind kept drifting across the room to Nathaniel Eastwood. He was elegantly sidestepping a small group of admirers, offering a tight-lipped smile. He looked as though he wished he could be anywhere else. And somehow, that sentiment resonated with Elena deeply. The woman droned on, oblivious to Elena's distraction. "And so I told them, darling, if you can't donate at least 100,000, why are you even at a charity ball?" She let out a practiced laugh. Elena forced a polite giggle. Of course. As the conversation lagged, the woman excused herself to greet others. Elena exhaled in relief, retreating to the edge of the ballroom. She desperately needed a moment to gather her thoughts. She sipped the last of her champagne, fiddling with the stem of the glass. That's when she felt a presence behind her. Turning slowly, she looked up to see the pair of dark eyes that had unsettled her just moments earlier. Nathaniel Eastwood stood a polite few feet away, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a half-finished glass of what looked like scotch. "Bianca Sterling?" he asked, his voice soft but resonant. It was a question, yet spoken with the confidence of someone used to being correct. Elena's mouth ran dry. She realized she was expected to respond. "Mr. Eastwood," she managed, offering the smallest nod. His lips quirked, almost a smile but not quite. "I believe we've never been formally introduced." Elena's heart hammered. "And no, I suppose not," she replied, mentally scolding herself for stuttering. She cleared her throat and tried again, remembering Bianca's persona. "It's a pleasure to meet you." He studied her face, and for a dizzying moment, Elena feared he somehow saw through the layers of makeup and the borrowed identity. But all he said was, "Likewise. I appreciate your attendance tonight." She gave a practiced half-smile, her thoughts scrambling for some elegant reply. She could practically hear Bianca's voice in her head, hissing, "Don't blow this." "It's an honor to be here," she murmured. Nathaniel glanced around, surveying the sea of guests. "Too many people," he said under his breath, low enough that only she could hear. Then he looked back at her, his gaze disarmingly direct. "I've heard the Sterlings often attend these events, but I've never had the chance to speak with you. You're quite elusive." Elena's cheeks flamed. She tried to hide her nervous swallow. "I'm not the biggest fan of the spotlight," she managed, forcing the words out. "But I do what I must." He inclined his head. "That we have in common." A silence stretched between them, charged with something Elena couldn't name. She was acutely aware of the fact that she was impersonating someone else and standing face to face with a man who was rumored to be the city's most sought-after heir. "Breathe, Elena. Just breathe." Eventually, he offered a small nod. "If it's not too presumptuous, would you like to find a quieter spot to talk? Or dance, perhaps?" Her heart skipped. Before she could second-guess, she recalled that part of the reason she was here was to keep up appearances for the Sterling name. "Yes. Thank you," she heard herself say. And that was how Elena Reyes, the invisible nanny, found herself taking the arm of Nathaniel Eastwood, the elusive billionaire, navigating the swirling crowd. Unbeknownst to her, this was just the first step down a path that would change both their lives, and nothing could have prepared her for what awaited around the corner. A hush seemed to fall over Elena's senses as Nathaniel Eastwood guided her through the throng of elegantly dressed guests. Though the crowd still buzzed with conversation, and the string quartet played a lilting waltz, it all faded to the periphery of Elena's mind. Her heart thudded in her ears as she stared at Nathaniel's profile. He had a composed, almost distant expression, but something in his eyes glimmered with curiosity. The dance floor was a polished expanse of marble under a magnificent chandelier. Couples swirled in graceful arcs, and the gentle clink of champagne glasses punctuated the music. When they reached the center, Nathaniel turned to face her. For a heartbeat, Elena thought she might forget how to breathe. He held out his hand. "Shall we?" Her throat went dry. She'd never danced a formal waltz in her life. She barely remembered the basic steps from distant, youthful attempts. But to refuse would be suspicious. Trying to calm the storm inside her, she placed her trembling hand in his. The music enveloped them. Nathaniel's hand rested lightly on her waist, guiding her in time with the gentle rise and fall of the melody. At first, she stumbled slightly, too conscious of their proximity. But a fleeting sense of reassurance flickered through her as she realized he led with a subtle confidence. "Just follow." She forced herself to relax a fraction, letting him guide her steps. He leaned in slightly, his breath warm against her ear. "Are you all right?" She forced a small laugh. "Just not used to dancing, that's all." It wasn't a lie. He tilted his head, studying her. "For someone who attends so many galas, you seem uneasy in these settings." Elena's chest constricted, his noticing too much. She mustered the best Bianco-esque tone she could. Galas aren't always as glamorous as people think, she said, hoping to remain vague. Sometimes, they are just another obligation. He seemed to accept that, nodding. They turned in a slow circle, the hem of her shimmering gown swishing against his polished shoes. As they glided across the dance floor, a few pairs of eyes trailed them, curious about the rare sight of Nathaniel Eastwood dancing. Elena felt those stares, and her heart pounded harder. Don't panic. Smile. Act calm. Their bodies moved in unison, caught in the gentle push and pull of the waltz. His touch was light yet firm, and for a moment, Elena found a strange serenity in the dance, like stepping into a dream where she wasn't the overworked nanny, but someone worthy of attention. The feeling was equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. Have you met the Eastwood family before? Nathaniel asked after a few more steps. Elena shook her head, forced to keep her response short and careful. Not personally. He seemed to scrutinize her again. Funny, I recall my father mentioning he'd met Bianca Sterling before. Something about a small art benefit last year. Did you? Her stomach tightened. If he was trying to verify details, she'd have to keep her cover. She plastered on a polite smile. Ah, yes. That was quite some time ago, she said, hoping the vagueness would suffice. We didn't have a chance to speak then. Nathaniel didn't press further. Instead, he twirled her with a graceful spin. She nearly lost her balance but caught herself in time. Her hairpin glittered under the chandelier's light, and for a fleeting moment, their gazes locked. She saw a flash of something, curiosity, intensity, and then he schooled his features back to composure. When the music slowed to a stop, applause scattered around them. Elena's cheeks warmed as she remembered the rest of the crowd existed. Nathaniel offered a gentlemanly bow, and she curtsied, mimicking the ladies around her. She hated how her hands trembled with adrenaline. A voice came from behind them. Nathaniel, I've been searching for you. A woman with elegant posture and dark, carefully styled hair approached, wearing a couture gown that sparkled with tiny crystals. She exuded an air of refined confidence. He turned, arching a brow. Victoria, he greeted. There was a polite distance in his tone. Victoria's gaze flickered to Elena. She wore the kind of polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I see you found someone to dance with. Are you going to introduce me? He hesitated, then gestured. Bianca Sterling, this is Victoria Hale, an associate of the family. Fiancé, if you recall, Victoria corrected with a practiced, graceful laugh, though her eyes held a tightness that betrayed annoyance. She extended a hand to Elena. A pleasure. Are you newly acquainted with Nathaniel? Elena's heart lurched. Fiancé? That was the first she'd heard of it. All the tabloids she'd glimpsed in passing mentioned speculation about Nathaniel's love life, but she hadn't read anything definitive. Carefully, Elena shook Victoria's hand. It's a pleasure. Nathaniel's jaw tensed imperceptibly. We were just enjoying the dance floor. Victoria's gaze slid over Elena's gown, her expression veiled but calculating. That's a stunning dress, Bianca. It's not your usual style, but it's lovely. She turned back to Nathaniel. Darling, there are some people eager to speak with you. Perhaps you and I could make the rounds together. Elena felt an inexplicable pang in her chest at the term darling. She sternly reminded herself that none of this was real. She was just a stand-in, and Nathaniel was practically engaged. Focus on your job. Get through the night without being discovered. She took a subtle step back. Nathaniel glanced at her, then at Victoria, as if weighing something. Finally, he exhaled and gave Elena a small nod. Excuse me, he said quietly. Without further ado, he offered his arm to Victoria, and they drifted off into the crowd. Elena silently released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. A swell of conflicting emotions churned in her gut. Relief at no longer being under Nathaniel's penetrating gaze, embarrassment for how unsteady she'd felt, and an unexplainable sting of jealousy at the sight of him with Victoria. You're acting ridiculous, she berated herself. This is all pretense. She made her way to a corner of the ballroom, scanning for a safe haven from further interrogation. A small alcove near the towering windows beckoned. The window overlooked the city lights, glittering streets, dancing headlights, the luminous skyline. It was stunning, and for a moment, Elena tried to calm her nerves by focusing on the view. "Miss Sterling," came a voice from behind. She turned to find an older gentleman with an earnest smile. "I just wanted to thank you for your donation last year to our children's literacy program. It made a real difference." Elena's heart skipped. "He thinks I'm Bianca." She scrambled for a response. "I'm happy to hear that it helped," she said, forcing a smile. He clasped her hand in gratitude. "It did indeed. I won't keep you. Enjoy the evening, my dear." She managed a polite nod, praying her face didn't betray her panic. If the real Bianca had made that donation, Elena knew nothing about it. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. It's possible she tossed some money at them for good PR. The near miss rattled her, though. After what felt like an eternity in the crowded ballroom, Elena decided she needed fresh air. She spotted a small set of doors leading out to a balcony. Slipping past a pair of chatting socialites, she pushed the glass door open and stepped out into the cool evening breeze. The balcony was a semicircle of polished marble overlooking the city. Soft lights illuminated the railing, and potted plants offered a semblance of privacy. Elena inhaled deeply, letting the crisp night air cleanse her lungs. She stepped to the edge, bracing her hands on the smooth railing. Below, the city hummed, cars honking in the distance, a faint buzz of life that felt more familiar than the opulent world behind her. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of reprieve. "Just one more hour or so, then I can slip away." She had promised Bianca she'd make a brief appearance, snap a few photos, and leave. "I've already danced with the host. That should count as my good deed for the evening. Escaping as well." Startled, Elena whirled around. Her stomach lurched when she saw Nathaniel Eastwood standing in the shadows, his tie slightly loosened, Scotch glass still in hand. He seemed more relaxed out here than he had indoors. Sorry," she mumbled. "I didn't realize this was private." He gave a small shrug. "It's not private, but it's definitely quieter than in there." He nodded towards the ballroom. "I won't disturb you if you'd prefer solitude." Yet he made no immediate move to leave. Elena's mind spun. She had to be careful not to slip up. She forced a cordial smile. "I don't mind." He inclined his head, taking a step closer to lean against the railing. A comfortable silence settled, punctuated by the distant hum of traffic. For a moment, Elena allowed herself to simply exist. No forced smiles, no stilted conversation. In that silence, she felt a flicker of something akin to relief. Finally, Nathaniel spoke, his voice low and reflective. "I come out here every year. The city looks different from this angle, doesn't it?" She followed his gaze. "Yes. It's almost beautiful." Her voice was softer now, lacking the pretense she usually had to maintain under Bianca's watchful eye. He glanced at her, lips curving slightly. "I'm glad someone else sees it that way. People like to mock the city's grit. But from a distance, the lights have a certain magic." Elena felt a pang in her chest. She was used to seeing the city from the ground floor, immersed in its hustle and chaos. Only now, from this high vantage point, could she appreciate the shimmering tapestry that hid its everyday struggles. She wondered what Nathaniel's life was like, always above the fray, seeing the world from lofty vantage points. Before she could stop herself, she murmured, "Must be nice, looking at everything from up here. You can almost believe all the problems are gone." A faint tension crossed his features. He studied her, perhaps surprised by her candor. "Sometimes I'd rather be down there," he said quietly, "where no one knows my name. Where I'm free." They lapsed into silence again. Elena's mind reeled. She never expected the elusive billionaire to feel trapped by his position, but his words sounded genuine. She thought about how she, too, felt trapped, though for entirely different reasons. She fiddled with a loose thread on the gown's hem. "If you don't mind my asking," Nathaniel said, breaking into her thoughts, "why have we never truly seen each other at these events before? It's strange that we've never crossed paths." Elena felt her pulse spike. "I had other obligations." Other obligations like chasing after Simone and Teddy. She tried to keep her voice steady. "This year, the timing worked out differently." He nodded, though his gaze lingered on her face, as if seeking something. For a moment, she feared he might see through the layers of facade, the borrowed dress, and the borrowed identity. But he didn't press further. Suddenly, the door to the balcony opened. Victoria stepped out, scanning the area until her eyes settled on them. Her expression tightened a fraction before melting back into polite neutrality. "Ah, there you are, Nathaniel. I wondered where you'd disappeared to." Her smile was colder than the night air when she glanced at Elena. Elena quickly stepped back. "I should probably head back inside," she offered, forcing a polite smile to Victoria. "It was nice talking with you, Mr. Eastwood." Victoria's brow arched slightly at the formality. "Yes, do come back in. There's a wonderful pastry spread everyone's raving about." Nathaniel said nothing as Elena slipped past them, but she felt his eyes follow her until the door closed behind her. Once inside, she exhaled shakily, her heart rattling in her chest. She headed straight for the nearest server, swapping her empty champagne flute for a fresh one. She needed something to calm her nerves. Even though she barely drank, a few sips of champagne seemed like a small act of mercy in this swirl of high society madness. She forced herself to circulate among the guests, exchanging pleasantries and feigning familiarity with people who recognized the dress and face they assumed belonged to Bianca Sterling. It was exhausting to maintain the veneer of confidence and affluence. By the time she'd completed the loop around the ballroom, her feet throbbed in the expensive heels, and her stomach churned from anxiety. Eventually, Gabriel found her, giving her a discreet nod. "Shall we make our exit, Ms. Sterling?" he whispered. She nodded gratefully, letting him guide her toward the exit. It was time to slip away, just as Bianca had instructed. Through the swirling sea of gowns and suits, Elena spotted Nathaniel one last time. He stood with Victoria and a group of well-dressed individuals, his face schooled into polite attentiveness. Their eyes met briefly, just enough to form a subtle connection in the space between them. Then she turned and disappeared through the grand doors, leaving behind the glitter, the music, and the watchful stares. Back in the car, Elena slumped against the seat, adrenaline still coursing through her. "You did well," Gabriel said quietly, offering a small nod of approval. "I don't think anyone suspected a thing." She managed a shaky smile. The night had felt like a bizarre dream, dancing with Nathaniel Eastwood, making small talk with strangers who had no idea who she truly was. Now, she was returning to the shadows. The borrowed gown, the borrowed identity, she'd shed them as soon as she reached the Sterling estate. And yet, the memory of Nathaniel's steady gaze lingered, stirring something inside her she couldn't quite identify. The next morning, Elena woke in her tiny attic room with an inexplicable knot of anxiety in her stomach. She'd successfully pulled off the masquerade at the Eastwood charity ball, but she couldn't shake the feeling of a looming consequence. Would rumors circulate? Would someone suspect her? She rose early, as usual, and went about her duties, preparing breakfast for the children, tidying up. But the memory of the previous night clung to her like a second skin. She found herself replaying every interaction, every near slip-up. And above all, she couldn't stop thinking about the brief but intense conversations she'd shared with Nathaniel Eastwood. She was in the middle of loading dishes into the dishwasher when Bianca swept into the kitchen, sunglasses perched on her head despite being indoors. She wore a smug look, probably from her short vacation to St. Bart's. "Elena." Elena set down a plate and turned. "Mrs. Sterling, welcome back." Bianca wasted no time. "How did it go?" she demanded. "I need details. Did everyone buy it?" "Yes," Elena said softly. "I didn't hear any doubts, and Gabriel said I did fine. I stayed just long enough to be seen, and left quickly after." Bianca's red lipstick mouth twisted into a grin. "Excellent. My publicists are already fielding comments about how stunning I looked. They won't shut up about the silver gown." She took off her sunglasses and tossed them on the counter. "By the way, I trust you didn't do anything out of character." Elena inhaled. "I danced once with Nathaniel Eastwood, but—" "You what?" Bianca's eyes flared with a mixture of surprise and glee. "With Nathaniel Eastwood. He approached me," Elena explained quickly. "I couldn't say no without arousing suspicion. It was just one dance." Bianca's expression shifted, a slow smile curving her lips. "Well, that's unexpected. As long as you didn't embarrass me. And if you did, I promise, you'll regret it." Elena managed to keep her composure. She swallowed her retort, silently taking in Bianca's threat. It no longer surprised her. At least I did the job she asked. Bianca turned on her heel. Right. I've got a few calls to make. Don't think this means you get a break, Elena. There's a fundraiser coming up for my friend's dog rescue, and I need you to pick up decorations later. Also, Simone's in a mood. Go placate her. Yes, Mrs. Sterling. With that, Bianca strutted out, phone already pressed to her ear. Elena's shoulders slumped. She looked out the window. The morning sun lit the courtyard, highlighting the precisely trimmed hedges. Even in the bright light, everything felt suffocating. Back to normal, she told herself. The ball is behind me. Except it wasn't. When she guided the children to their afternoon tutoring session and retreated to her small break, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a text from Carlos, but her eyes widened at the unknown number. Unknown. I'm looking for Bianca Sterling. I hope this is the right contact. Nathaniel Eastwood. Elena's heart lurched so violently, she nearly dropped the phone. Nathaniel Eastwood texted me? Then she remembered. Bianca had left her phone behind as a contingency if anyone texted about the ball. She'd asked Elena to keep watch for any important messages. But Bianca never mentioned a direct message from him. Elena stared at the screen, mind spinning. Why was he texting Bianca? Did he suspect something or want to follow up on last night's events? Her first instinct was to ignore it, but she knew that might draw suspicion, especially if he later confronted the real Bianca about her non-response. I have to be careful. She typed a quick reply. Elena, as Bianca, this is Bianca. How can I help you, Mr. Eastwood? She pressed send, heart pounding. Within minutes, the reply came. Nathaniel, I wanted to invite you to an informal follow-up meeting. My family's foundation is organizing a new initiative. I recall you expressing some interest last night in philanthropic work, children's causes. Was it? Elena's palms grew clammy. She'd made no such claim, but apparently, Nathaniel had gleaned from their brief chat that she was someone with a heart. She couldn't recall if she'd said anything that implied interest in kids' charities. Oh God, how do I handle this? She took a shaky breath, forcing her mind to stay logical. Bianca might want this contact with Nathaniel for future social climbing. Not replying could anger Bianca. She typed, carefully choosing words that sounded more like the socialite. Elena, as Bianca, I'd be happy to learn more. When and where? The response was almost immediate. Nathaniel, tomorrow afternoon at the Eastwood Tower, 4 p.m., if you're free. It would be good to chat without the crowd. Elena's stomach dropped. A private meeting? That was the last thing she wanted. But refusing might draw more attention. I'll have to tell Bianca. But Bianca was notorious for skipping obligations if they weren't glamorous enough. What if she forces me to go again, under her name? The thought alone made her break into a cold sweat. Before she could resolve her internal debate, the children's tutor stepped in. Ms. Reyes, Simone's refusing to practice her piano scales. Could you please? Yes, Elena said distractedly, pocketing the phone. She tried to compose herself as she walked into the tutoring room. Simone pouted on the piano bench, arms crossed, while the tutor looked exasperated. Simone, Elena began softly, I know practicing scales can be boring, but I don't want to do them anymore, the little girl whined, thrusting her bottom lip out. Mommy says I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Elena resisted the urge to sigh. I'll tell you what, if you go through all your scales once, I'll let you pick a reward, maybe 20 minutes of your favorite show before bedtime. Simone blinked, considering the offer. Okay, fine. Elena watched as Simone started plunking out the notes, each a slightly off-tune repetition. Her phone vibrated in her pocket again, reminding her of the ticking time bomb. She clenched her jaw. I'll handle this once Simone's done. Later that afternoon, Elena found a moment of privacy in her small attic room. She sank onto the bed, bracing herself for what was likely to be a harrowing conversation with Bianca. She dialed Bianca's number. Bianca picked up on the second ring. What? Came her sharp greeting. Elena swallowed. Mr. Eastwood texted your phone number. He wants to meet with you tomorrow at his tower to discuss a philanthropic initiative. Bianca was silent for a beat. Then she scoffed. Oh, so the man does want to follow up. Interesting. Must be that dance you had with him. Elena's cheeks heated even though Bianca couldn't see her. He might think I'm you, she stammered. So, do you want to go? Bianca let out a laugh. Are you kidding? Tomorrow I have a spa appointment and a lunch date with a friend. I can't be bothered. But, if you don't go, he might think you're brushing him off. There was a rustling, perhaps Bianca flipping through her schedule. Fine, I'll just send you again. Go as me, talk about the foundation, nod politely, do whatever you have to do so he continues to think we're interested. It might come in handy down the line. Elena's pulse galloped. But. Don't argue, Bianca snapped. You did it once, you can do it again. Do you know how valuable a connection with the Eastwood name is? If he wants to invite me to philanthropic meetings, I can't just ignore that. But I'm not about to waste my own time on something so tedious. So, you'll do it. End of discussion. With that, Bianca hung up, leaving Elena to stare at her phone in dread. Another deception? She felt sick. She'd barely managed the ball. A private, face-to-face meeting with Nathaniel was far riskier. He was bound to notice something amiss, especially without the distraction of the crowds. Yet, what choice did she have? Bianca held the power. She'll fire me if I refuse. Elena clutched the phone tight. She had no desire to plunge deeper into this lie, but the image of Carlos's fragile health formed in her mind, fueling her desperation. I have to do it, just one more time, until Bianca's interest wanes. The hours ticked away too quickly for Elena's nerves. By the time she arrived at Eastwood Tower, her hands trembled despite Gabriel's attempts to steady her with a confidence pep talk. He had done her makeup more subdued this time, still glamorous but not as heavy as the ball. She wore a form-fitting navy dress borrowed from Bianca's closet, pairing it with matching heels and a tasteful pearl necklace. Her hair was pinned in a neat twist at the nape of her neck, designed to make her look more professional. As she stepped into the towering lobby, she felt dwarfed by the sheer scale of the space, marble floors, high ceilings, enormous glass windows showcasing the city skyline. She approached the reception desk, carefully affecting Bianca's haughty posture. "Bianca Sterling, here to see Mr. Eastwood," she murmured, sliding her sunglasses off with a flourish. The receptionist checked the computer, gave her a polite smile, and directed her to the private elevator that led to Nathaniel's office on the top floor. Elena's stomach churned as she rode the elevator up, each ascending floor a countdown to her potential downfall. At last, the doors slid open, revealing a sleek hallway with plush carpeting and modern art hanging on the walls. She stepped out, approaching a pair of double glass doors etched with the Eastwood logo. A tall, poised assistant greeted her. "Ms. Sterling, Mr. Eastwood is expecting you." "Right this way," the assistant said, leading her into a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The view spanned half the city, a breathtaking panorama of skyscrapers, roads, and distant bridges. In front of the window stood a large, polished desk, behind which sat Nathaniel Eastwood himself. Nathaniel rose as she entered, extending a hand. "Ms. Sterling, thank you for coming." Elena forced a courteous smile, hoping her face didn't betray her nerves. "Of course." He gestured to a sitting area, 2 leather chairs and a small couch arranged around a glass coffee table. "Shall we sit? I thought we could keep this informal." She nodded, sinking into one of the leather chairs, her back stiff. He settled opposite her, crossing his legs and steepling his fingers. Up close, in the daylight, Elena noticed more details. A faint scar near his temple, the subdued gold cufflinks on his sleeves, and the hint of fatigue in his eyes, as though he'd been up most of the night working. "I appreciate your willingness to meet," Nathaniel began, his tone professional but warmer than before. "The Eastwood Foundation has been looking for partners for our upcoming education initiative. We plan to renovate libraries and fund after-school programs in underprivileged neighborhoods." He produced a stack of documents from a folder. "These are the preliminary outlines. I remember you mentioning you had an interest in children's welfare." He paused. "You do recall that conversation, right?" Elena's breath caught. "Is testing me again?" She swallowed. "Yes, I remember." She took the documents, glancing at them briefly before resting them on her lap. I admire any effort that helps children learn and grow. Nathaniel nodded slowly. That's good to hear. I hope we could collaborate with the Sterlings, perhaps a joint fundraiser or some promotional events to draw more attention. The name Sterling carries weight in certain circles. A half-smile tugged at his lips, and Elena realized with dismay that he was attempting to be charming. He's trying to bring me in as a partner. This is serious. Her mind spun as she sought a response that would be vague yet accepting. That does sound promising, she managed, carefully. I'd have to check my schedule, but I'm open to supporting something so worthwhile. Nathaniel held her gaze. Good. Let's consider this a starting point. He leaned back, folding his arms. I have to admit, I was pleasantly surprised to see your dedication to philanthropic causes. At the ball, you seemed different from most in our circles. Different, she repeated nervously. He gave a small nod. Less self-absorbed, if you'll pardon my candor. Most socialites have a certain vanity about them, but you were humble, almost shy. Her cheeks warmed. She scrambled to maintain Bianca's persona. I was just out of my element. It's not that I don't enjoy these events, but you know how noisy they can be. He studied her for a moment, then spoke gently. Yes, I can see how that might be overwhelming. There was a pause, and he picked up a pen, tapping it lightly on the folder. I should also mention, my father was quite impressed that you stepped in for the ball. He'd heard you might not attend, but when he saw you, he assumed you were taking a more active role. His expressed interest in meeting you as well. Elena's inside seized. Richard Eastwood? The patriarch himself wanted to meet her? That was a potential catastrophe, in the making. She forced a smile that felt brittle on her lips. I'd be honored, of course. Nathaniel nodded again, then rose. She took that as a cue to stand as well. He walked toward the large window, gazing out at the city. I won't keep you too long, he said. But before you leave, is there anything you'd like to ask or clarify? I want our partnership to be transparent. Elena's mind went blank. She clasped her hands together, struggling to conjure a relevant question about philanthropic ventures. I suppose, the timeline, she ventured. When do you plan on launching the new library programs? He glanced over his shoulder, offering a small smile. We're aiming for a fall launch, with events scattered throughout the year. Of course, if the Sterlings have any recommendations or prefer scheduling, we can adjust. This is a collaborative effort. I see, she murmured, nodding mechanically. Nathaniel turned fully, stepping away from the window. His next words felt more personal. Ms. Sterling, I'd like to thank you again for that dance. It was a highlight of my evening. Sometimes, these gatherings can feel monotonous, but our conversation felt genuine. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. She had to steady her breathing. It was my pleasure. She prayed her voice didn't shake. The corners of his mouth lifted, almost wistful. Then he glanced at his watch, as if remembering his professional obligations. Well, I'm sure you have other places to be. I won't keep you any longer. He extended a hand, and she shook it. His palm was warm, his grip gentle yet firm. When she released his hand, she barely managed a polite farewell, before the assistant escorted her back to the private elevator. Once the doors slid shut, Elena let out a breath she'd been holding. Her nerves felt like they'd been set on fire. She had somehow navigated the conversation without giving herself away, but the deception felt thicker than ever. On the street level, she found Gabriel waiting by the car. He opened the door for her, and she all but collapsed onto the back seat. Her heart still thundered with leftover adrenaline. This is going too far. The Eastwood Foundation's official partnership with the Sterlings would require repeated contact. Sooner or later, someone would recognize the real Bianca from an old photograph, or Bianca herself would slip up when meeting Nathaniel. The entire charade was a ticking time bomb. In the days following the private meeting at Eastwood Tower, Elena tried to resume her normal routine. Yet, the normalcy felt forced, a facade crumbling at the edges. She spent mornings wrangling Simone and Teddy, afternoons sorting out Bianca's errands, and nights drifting into uneasy sleep, haunted by the knowledge that her ruse was deepening. Bianca, on the other hand, was thrilled. "I told you this was the easiest arrangement," she said one afternoon, sipping a latte in the living room while Elena carefully dusted around the fragile porcelain figurines. "Now the Eastwoods think I'm some philanthropic saint, and I don't have to lift a finger." Elena forced herself to remain silent. She glanced at the clock, noting she had just enough time to slip out and call Carlos before preparing dinner for the children. While Bianca scrolled on her phone, Elena excused herself. Outside, near the garden, she dialed Carlos. After a few rings, his weary voice answered. "Hey, sis. How are you?" she asked, leaning against a stone column, letting the soothing smell of roses calm her. "Good days and bad," he said, though his voice carried a note of fatigue. "I'm worried about you, though. You haven't called much." She sighed. "I'm okay, just busy. It's complicated. But I'm managing." She chewed her lip, wondering if she could confide in him about the impersonation. But the last thing she wanted was to add more stress to his plate. He'd be furious if he knew how Bianca was treating her. "I miss you," she whispered. "Me too," Carlos responded softly. "Hang in there. I'm proud of you." Despite everything, her heart warmed. She ended the call, wishing she could do more for him. That weekend, Bianca received an invitation to a prestigious art gallery opening, courtesy of the Eastwood Foundation. They were showcasing up-and-coming artists from underprivileged backgrounds, a philanthropic tie-in. Without even reading the details, Bianca tossed the invitation at Elena. "You'll go for me. Make sure the cameras see Bianca Sterling is supporting the cause." Elena's stomach clenched. Another event. Bianca snapped her fingers. "Do I need to repeat myself?" Defeated, Elena murmured, "No, Mrs. Sterling." And that was how Elena found herself, yet again, wearing a borrowed dress, this time a sleek black cocktail number, and stepping into a trendy art gallery one Thursday evening. The gallery was buzzing with socialites, artists, and philanthropic sponsors. Waiters in crisp white shirts floated through with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. She moved through the gallery, heart pounding with every step. Surely someone will notice I'm not Bianca. One wrong question, and I'm finished. Yet the crowd seemed more interested in the vibrant paintings and sculptures. Elena tried to blend in, occasionally pausing to admire a piece of art. It was during one such pause, in front of a surrealist painting depicting a fragmented cityscape, that she heard a familiar voice. Bianca Sterling. Nathaniel's tone held a quiet warmth. Startled, she turned. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the painting. "Mr. Eastwood," she managed, mouth suddenly dry. He inclined his head. "Nathaniel, please. We've met enough times for formalities to be unnecessary." She flushed, unsure how to respond. Instead, she gestured at the painting, forcing a light tone. "This is remarkable. The artist must have put a lot of emotion into those brushstrokes." Nathaniel studied the piece intently. "Yes, it's a reflection of the city's broken promises, I think. The layering of shapes, it shows both hope and despair." Elena found herself oddly moved by his interpretation. She glanced at him, noticing the subtle sadness that flickered in his expression. He turned to her. "I'm glad you decided to show up tonight. I wasn't sure if you'd come." She swallowed, recalling Bianca's orders. "I find it inspiring to see new artists getting a platform." Nathaniel gave a small smile. "I do too." Then, hesitating a moment, he added quietly, "And, to be honest, I was hoping I'd run into you again." Elena's pulse raced. Did he suspect something? Or was he? No, she admonished herself. His engaged, or at least nearly so, to Victoria. She forced a polite smile. "I'm here," she said simply. Before he could respond, a burst of music sounded from the corner of the gallery. Someone had begun playing a haunting violin piece, and a small area had been cleared for an impromptu dance demonstration. A few couples began swaying to the melody, turning the gallery's open space into a whimsical dance floor. Nathaniel caught her eye. "Care to dance?" He extended his hand, a quiet invitation. Her stomach knotted. She should refuse. Being close to him again is dangerous. But under the glow of the gallery lights and the gentle pull of the music, her heart betrayed her caution. Almost as if in a daze, she placed her hand in his. They moved to the makeshift dance floor. This was no formal waltz, but a slow, sultry melody that invited pairs to move closely. Nathaniel's hand found her waist, drawing her in, while her hand rested on his shoulder. Their bodies aligned, swaying softly to the violin's lament. Elena's chest tightened with a mixture of fear and something else, an unexpected thrill. She tried to keep her breathing steady. "You like dancing, don't you?" she murmured, immediately regretting the too personal question. But Nathaniel's lips quirked. "I didn't used to. But lately, I find it calming." He guided her gently, each step measured yet fluid. "And I think it's because of who I'm dancing with." Heat rushed to Elena's cheeks. This is too close, too personal. She worried he might feel her trembling. She forced a soft laugh, desperately trying to diffuse the moment. "You're quite good at it." He shrugged. "I learned as a child, but I never put it to much use. At these events, everyone just stands around sipping champagne, talking business. They rarely enjoy the moment." His words stirred something in her. She thought about her own life, how rarely she got to enjoy any moment, always hustling, always fighting to pay the bills. Yet here she was, in the arms of a billionaire, dancing. Surreal didn't even begin to describe it. As they continued to sway, she became painfully aware of the difference between them. He was refined, wealthy, with an unspoken power. She was an imposter, his dancing with a lie. The violin music rose to a crescendo, then faded into a hush. Applause from the onlookers broke the spell. Elena stepped back, breath hitching. She forced a polite smile, trying not to show how unsteady she felt. Nathaniel's eyes lingered on her. "Thank you," he said softly, "for this dance, for sharing it with me." She didn't trust herself to reply, so she nodded. Then, conscious of the need to escape before her facade cracked, she excused herself to examine another piece of art. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Elena felt relieved that no one had cornered her with suspicious questions. She was preparing to leave when she noticed Nathaniel standing alone near a dimly lit corner of the gallery, gazing at a painting of a solitary figure against a dark background. Compelled by a mixture of curiosity and worry, she hesitated, then approached him. "It's a stunning piece," she offered. He nodded. "It captures loneliness in a way I haven't seen before." Elena studied the painting, feeling its silent desolation. "Yes," she whispered. "It's almost suffocating." Nathaniel's gaze flickered to her, thoughtful. "Have you ever felt like that? Suffocated by your own circumstances?" Her throat constricted. She forced a neutral reply. "Hasn't everyone, at some point?" He turned fully toward her. The overhead lights cast shadows on his face, accentuating the seriousness in his eyes. "I have. For a long time, actually. Everyone thinks wealth means freedom, but sometimes it's the biggest cage of all." She swallowed, heart beating painfully. "That must be hard." He nodded, exhaling. "Ever since I was a boy, everything was decided for me, where I studied, who I associated with, how I should behave. I'm grateful for the opportunities, but sometimes I wish I could just slip away, disappear into the city." Elena understood the feeling of suffocation, albeit from the opposite side of the spectrum. But she had to remind herself that her empathy was dangerous. She was merely an imposter in his world. "Don't get attached. Don't forget who you are." She managed a faint smile. "Sometimes, we all want to escape." Nathaniel studied her intently. "You speak as if you understand. I suspect there's more to you than meets the eye, Miss Sterling." Her pulse skidded. She had to maintain the illusion. "Don't be silly. I'm just another socialite trying to do some good." He gave her a soft, enigmatic look that made her heart clench. Then he said something that caught her off guard. "I don't think that's true. I think you hide a lot behind those eyes." Before she could respond, a voice called out from across the gallery, "Nathaniel, over here." It was Victoria, waving him over to a group of well-dressed individuals. Elena tensed, remembering Victoria's disapproving gaze. Nathaniel sighed and gave Elena an apologetic nod. "Duty calls. But let's not make this our last conversation." He turned, disappearing into the crowd. Elena watched him go, her chest tight. She felt a swirl of contradictory emotions, longing, guilt, fear. This is only going to get harder. She left soon after, stepping out into the cool night air. The crisp breeze stung her cheeks, bringing a painful clarity. She was in over her head. Each new dance, each lingering gaze, wove a deeper connection with Nathaniel, one built on lies. And if she didn't find a way out soon, the heartache would be immeasurable for both of them. As they pulled away from Eastwood Tower, Elena stared out the window, lost in thought. She was in over her head, and Nathaniel's gaze lingered in her mind as a constant reminder of the danger. Because with every encounter, she felt an unsettling realization creeping into her heart. It wasn't just fear that Nathaniel stirred within her. There was something else, something that made her wonder how it would feel if she were truly free to be herself, and if he could see her for who she really was. Days blurred into a tense routine for Elena. She managed the children, performed her duties, and, whenever summoned to maintain Bianca's social ruse, found herself entangled further with Nathaniel Eastwood. The Sterling household buzzed with rumors that Bianca and Nathaniel Eastwood were seen conversing at various events. Bianca reveled in the attention, oblivious or indifferent to the emotional toll on Elena. One late afternoon, Elena was guiding Simone through her homework when the household intercom crackled. "Elena Reyes, please come to the foyer," a staff member's voice said. Elena's heart fluttered with unease. Usually, Bianca summoned her with a sharp yell. The intercom meant something official. She ushered Simone into the care of another tutor, then hurried down. Her steps echoed on the marble as she approached the grand foyer. To her shock, she found Nathaniel Eastwood standing there, flanked by a poised personal assistant and a bewildered-looking butler. He wore a tailored suit that accentuated his broad shoulders, and a quiet confidence radiated from him. Bianca stood opposite him, arms crossed, lips drawn tight. The tension was palpable. Elena's stomach twisted. This is it, he's found out. Or something else. She forced herself to keep walking, noticing the flicker of confusion on Nathaniel's face as he glanced from Bianca to Elena. "Mr. Eastwood decided to pay a visit," Bianca said icily. "Says he wants to discuss some philanthropic details and thought it best to come in person." She gave him a pointed look. "Though I'm not sure why you're so insistent on speaking to me here." Nathaniel's gaze darted to Elena, then back to Bianca. "I suppose I wanted to ensure we were on the same page," he said, voice calm. "But now I realize I might have made an error in judgment." Bianca arched a perfectly tweezed eyebrow. "And what error is that?" He studied her face, then glanced at Elena. "The woman I've been speaking with, the one I shared a dance with at the ball, isn't you, is it?" Elena's heart nearly stopped. "He knows." Bianca's eyes widened, then she barked a mocking laugh. "What are you talking about? I am Bianca Sterling." Nathaniel's gaze was sharp. "So you claim," he said softly, "but the person I danced with was very different. She had a different aura about her." Bianca rolled her eyes. "Are you suggesting someone impersonated me? That's absurd. You must be mixing me up with some other woman." She turned to Elena, her expression venomous. "Elena, why are you just standing there? Offer Mr. Eastwood some refreshments." Elena's stomach somersaulted. She approached hesitantly, her voice trembling. "Would you care for a drink, Mr. Eastwood?" He looked at her, eyebrows knitting together, as if seeing her for the first time in a new light. "Your voice," he murmured. "It sounds familiar." Bianca snorted. "Don't be ridiculous. She's our nanny. She can't possibly have the same voice as me." Nathaniel ignored Bianca, focusing on Elena. A flicker of recognition lit his eyes, and her pulse pounded in her ears. Then Bianca let out a disdainful laugh, stepping between them. "You come here accusing me of deception? Please. You must have had a bit too much to drink at the ball or something." She flicked a gaze to her assistant, who was lurking near the staircase. "Show Mr. Eastwood the door. He's clearly confused." Nathaniel's mouth tightened. He didn't move. "I'd like a moment with your nanny," he said, voice firm. Bianca's face flushed. "Absolutely not. She's busy. And you, sir, should leave." She snapped her fingers, and the butler stepped forward, looking nervous. Nathaniel hesitated, shifting his gaze to Elena. She felt trapped, fear coiling in her stomach. But she couldn't say anything, couldn't risk her job, her brother's well-being. She remained silent as the butler ushered Nathaniel and his assistant toward the door. Before he left, Nathaniel looked over his shoulder, his eyes locking with Elena's. In that split second, she saw anger, confusion, and perhaps betrayal flicker across his face. Then the door closed, leaving behind a suffocating silence. Bianca rounded on Elena, fury etched into her features. "What was that? You nearly gave everything away with your trembling." I'm sorry," Elena stammered, cheeks burning. He recognized something. Bianca sneered. "Yes. Well, you better hope he writes this off as a misunderstanding. Otherwise, we're finished." She jabbed a manicured nail in Elena's direction. "If we're exposed, I'll make sure you regret it more than I do. Now get out of my sight." Elena fled, heart thudding like a drum. He knows. Or at least he suspects. The shame and guilt roiled inside her, and she barely made it to her attic room before tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't want to lie anymore, but she couldn't escape. Bianca held too much power over her and her finances. With Carlos depending on her, what choice did she have? The following morning, Elena was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the children when Nathaniel Eastwood appeared again, this time unannounced, stepping into the house like he had every right to be there. The staff scrambled, unsure of how to handle this intrusion, but his calm determination was unshakable. Bianca, in a silk robe and hair wrapped in a towel, emerged from the hallway. "You have some nerve," she spat. "I told you to leave yesterday." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "I'm here for an explanation. I deserve that much." His gaze flicked to Elena, who gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady herself. Bianca laughed, the sound icy. "You want an explanation? Fine." She marched over to Elena, grabbing her by the arm and yanking her forward. "This is Elena Reyes, my nanny. She's the one you danced with at the ball. I found her infiltration quite amusing, but I assure you, it was all in good fun." Elena's heart hammered. She glanced at Nathaniel, seeing the shock flash across his features. He looked at Bianca, then at Elena. "She's not you?" he asked, voice strained. "All this time, I've been speaking to someone impersonating you." Bianca shrugged, her tone dripping with condescension. "Oh, lighten up. It's not the end of the world. We had a laugh at your expense. So what? It's just a harmless social tactic. Elena was just doing her job. After all, she's paid to follow orders. Isn't that right?" She cast Elena a withering glance. "Tell him." Elena's cheeks burned with shame. Taze pricked her eyes, but she forced them back. I'm sorry," she whispered. Nathaniel's face darkened with anger. "So it was all a lie." He exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. Why go to such lengths?" Bianca rolled her eyes. "I couldn't attend the ball, but it's an important social event. I needed to be seen there, so I sent her as me. It's not my fault you were foolish enough to be taken in by a nanny's act." She tossed her head back, letting out a scornful laugh. Nathaniel's fists clenched at his sides. He turned to Elena, voice cold. "And you went along with this?" She couldn't bear to meet his eyes. "I had to," she said softly, tears threatening. "I have no excuse. I just needed the job." His gaze flickered with anger and, was that hurt? He pivoted away, pressing a hand to his temple. "I can't believe this," he muttered. "You made a fool of me." Before Elena could gather the courage to speak, Bianca intervened, her tone dripping with cruelty. "Yes, well, you should be more careful who you dance with in the future." She smirked. "Now, if you don't mind, Nathaniel, kindly remove yourself from my house. I have better things to do." Nathaniel stiffened, turning back to Elena. His eyes burned with betrayal. "I thought you were different," he said quietly. "But you're just another part of this game." He shook his head. "I must have been blind." He didn't wait for a response. He strode to the door, slamming it shut behind him. The echo reverberated through the house, a final blow that left Elena trembling. Bianca tutted, turning to Elena. "What a drama queen. Anyway, get the children ready for their tennis lessons." She flounced off, leaving Elena standing in the foyer, tears slipping down her cheeks. She sank to her knees, the cold marble seeping through her skirt. It's over. He hates me. A hollow ache filled her chest, surprising her with its intensity. She barely knew Nathaniel, yet the connection they shared, however deceptive it was, had felt real on some level. And now she'd lost even the chance to explain. In the days that followed, Elena noticed a sharp change in Bianca's behavior. At first, Bianca seemed triumphant, proud of having humiliated Nathaniel. But as word spread that the Eastwood Foundation was reconsidering collaboration with the Sterling brand, Bianca's smugness turned to rage. She cornered Elena in the hallway one afternoon, eyes blazing. "Do you see what you've done? Nathaniel Eastwood is backing out of deals. My father is furious at me for jeopardizing potential partnerships. It's your fault." Elena's pulse pounded. "I did what you told me to do. I never wanted to lie." Bianca scoffed. "Don't get snippy. You're a nobody. You should be grateful I gave you this job. If you cause any more trouble, I'll destroy you." She stepped closer, voice low and threatening. "I know your brother depends on your paycheck, your insurance. Imagine if he didn't have that." Elena's eyes went wide, fear coiling in her stomach. "You wouldn't." "Wouldn't I?" Bianca retorted. "I have connections everywhere. Keep your head down, do your work, and don't even think about contacting Nathaniel." Elena swallowed thickly, tears of frustration and helplessness burning her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. Bianca stepped back, crossing her arms. "Good. Now clean up the guest room. We have visitors tonight, and I want everything perfect." As Bianca strutted away, Elena realized she was trapped more than ever. She'd lost any chance of clearing the air with Nathaniel, and Bianca's threats ensured she wouldn't dare try. Grief and guilt gnawed at her, but she clung to a single, painful truth. She had no choice but to obey. "For Carlos, I'll endure this." Elena's life became a grim routine of submission and quiet desperation. The estate's walls felt more like a prison each day. Bianca's hostility grew, fueled by the failing partnership with the Eastwoods. She snapped at Elena for every minor infraction, threatened her job daily, and even restricted her breaks, forcing her to work longer hours without rest. The staff watched with pity, but none dared intervene. One rainy afternoon, Elena was helping Teddy with his reading practice. Thunder rumbled outside, and raindrops rattled against the windows. Teddy stumbled over a word, frustration etched on his face. Elena leaned in softly, guiding him through the pronunciation. He finally got it, letting out a breathy laugh. "Thanks," he mumbled. His gaze flicked up. "Are you sad, Elena?" She froze, surprised at his observation. She mustered a small smile. "Just tired, sweetheart." He nodded, scrutinizing her face. "Mommy says you have to stay here forever, or she'll do something bad to you. She said you tried to ruin her." A lump formed in Elena's throat. She reached out, smoothing Teddy's hair. "I would never ruin anything. Don't worry about that, okay? Let's keep reading." But a cold dread settled in her stomach. If Bianca was even sharing her threats with the children, there was no telling what she was capable of. Elena realized with dawning horror that she had to find a way out, no matter the cost. "I can't live under this constant threat." That evening, as lightning streaked across the sky, Bianca summoned Elena to her private study. A single lamp cast a harsh glow over the room, highlighting Bianca's rigid posture behind an ornate desk. Elena stood before her, heart pounding. "You wanted to see me, Mrs. Sterling." Bianca leaned forward, steepling her fingers. "My father has managed to salvage part of our relationship with the Eastwoods, but it took a lot of work. And as far as I'm concerned, you're a liability." She eyed Elena with disdain. "I'm giving you an ultimatum. If you ever speak to Nathaniel again, or anyone connected to him, about this deception, I'll destroy you. Clay." Elena's breath caught. "I understand." Bianca smiled, standing and walking around the desk. "I don't think you do. Because if you did, you'd already have left this house." She leaned in, voice cold. "The only reason I'm keeping you around is because the kids have grown used to you, and it'd be a hassle to find a new nanny right now. But make no mistake, if I see even a hint of communication between you and the Eastwoods, you're gone. And your brother's precious healthcare? That disappears too." Elena's hands shook. "Why would I even?" "Don't feign innocence," Bianca snapped. I saw the way you looked at Nathaniel. Don't think I didn't notice. A pathetic crush, perhaps. She let out a mocking laugh. As if he'd ever want someone like you, a servant who lies for a living. Face reality, Elena. Men like him don't marry beneath their station. You were a novelty. Now you're nothing. Tears burned at Elena's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I understand, she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. Bianca circled her like a predator. Good. Now go. And pray you don't cross me again. A week passed in sullen quiet. Elena did her best to avoid any mention of Nathaniel, but rumors still circulated. She overheard staff whispering that Nathaniel was seen with Victoria Hale, fueling talk of an engagement. Bianca gloated about it, calling Elena foolish for getting caught up in a billionaire's fleeting interest. Late one evening, as Elena finally wrapped up her chores, Bianca cornered her in the hallway. Good news, Bianca said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Nathaniel Eastwood's engagement to Victoria Hale is official. Their families are announcing it soon. Elena's heart twisted, a painful pang she couldn't fully understand. Despite everything, a small part of her had harbored an impossible hope. Now, hearing this confirmed made the loss feel tangible. Bianca seemed to revel in her reaction. It must sting, thinking you had a chance. Let this be a reminder of your place. Elena swallowed, mustering the last of her dignity. I never thought I had a chance. Bianca huffed. Then you're not as stupid as I assumed. She turned away, leaving Elena standing in the dimly lit corridor, tears brimming in her eyes. That night, Elena wept quietly in her attic room. She hated herself for mourning something that was never real. He never really knew me, only the facade. Still, the dances, the conversations, the fleeting connection, they had felt real in a way she'd never experienced. And now, it was over. The next morning, Elena woke to a tear-stained pillow. She tried to bury her ache, reminding herself that her life had always been a series of sacrifices. This was just another one. But as she went about her day, Bianca's barbs felt sharper, the children's demands weighed heavier, and her chest felt like it might burst from the strain. She needed an escape. Any escape. Even if it meant leaving the city. But how could she manage that with Carlos's health insurance tied to her employment? Late that afternoon, she received a text from an unknown number. Unknown, I have something you need to see. Meet me at the cafe on Pine Street at 7 p.m. N. Her heart lurched. N? Nathaniel? She immediately deleted the text, panic seizing her. But curiosity gnawed at her. He wants to see me? Why? Hours passed as she debated with herself. Finally, unable to resist the pull of closure, she slipped out of the Sterling mansion under the guise of running errands. She caught a cab to Pine Street, arriving at the modest corner cafe. The sky had turned a smoky purple as dusk settled. Inside, the cafe was nearly empty. She spotted Nathaniel in a back booth, wearing a simple shirt and slacks, no trace of his usual formal attire. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. The moment he saw her, he stood, tension in his posture. Elena's heart pounded. She approached cautiously, sliding into the booth opposite him. Mr. Eastwood, she said quietly. He nodded in greeting, though his gaze was guarded. Elena, he replied, speaking her name for the first time. She swallowed hard, an ache blooming in her chest. They sat in silence for a long moment, the soft hum of the coffee machine in the background. Finally, Nathaniel cleared his throat and pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. He slid it across the table. I wanted to give this to you. Elena frowned, picking it up. She opened it to find a printed letter, with a cursive signature at the bottom. Her eyes scanned the contents, confusion mounting. Mr. Eastwood, I apologize for any misunderstanding. The truth is, She stopped, heart racing. What is this? Nathaniel's voice was rough. It's a letter you wrote. It showed up at my office a few days ago. It explains everything. How Bianca forced you to impersonate her, how you never intended to deceive me. You spoke about needing the job for your sick brother and apologized for the pain the charade caused. Elena's eyes widened. She turned the page, seeing details that echoed her private thoughts, her struggles, her regrets. But she'd never written this letter. I I didn't send this, she whispered, her mind reeling. Nathaniel scoffed. That's strange, because it's signed with your name. And it matches your script from those forms you filled out at my office. He studied her, confusion and anger roiling in his gaze. Why would you send this if it wasn't true? Elena's head spun. I never wrote it, she insisted. I swear, someone else must have. She froze as a horrifying realization dawned on her. Bianca. It had to be Bianca, forging her handwriting. Was it another twisted game, or a way to sabotage her? Nathaniel stared, frustration etched on his face. Then why does it match your handwriting? Elena closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. She must have copied it. She's had access to my notes, my writing. Maybe she wanted to. She cut herself off, uncertain of Bianca's motive. This could be a trap to lure her out, so Bianca could have a reason to fire her, for betrayal. Or perhaps Bianca planned to blackmail Nathaniel in some way. Either way, it was a manipulative power play. Nathaniel rubbed his temple. I came here hoping to hear you explain. I wanted to believe you. His voice cracked with emotion. Because despite the lies, something about you felt real to me. A wave of anguish swept over her. She reached out, placing a trembling hand over his. It was real, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to deceive you. But Bianca threatened me, threatened my brother's health coverage. Tears welled in her eyes. Nathaniel, He squeezed his eyes shut, withdrawing his hand. I don't know what to believe anymore. His voice wavered with heartbreak. I'm engaged now. My father and Victoria's father arranged it. It's expected of me. You were a glimmer of hope in a life I've never chosen. But now... Elena's tears slipped free. She bit her lip, forcing herself to speak even though her voice trembled. I understand. I won't interfere with your life. You deserve peace. Nathaniel shook his head, eyes shining with emotion. And you? Do you have peace, Elena? She let out a broken laugh. Peace isn't an option for me. They stared at each other across the dimly lit table, sorrow thick in the air. Outside, the street lights glowed, cars whooshed by. Finally, Nathaniel cleared his throat, pushing the envelope back towards her. I have to go. Victoria's waiting. My father expects me to finalize things. He stood, shoulders slumped. Elena stood as well, breath hitching. Goodbye, Mr. Eastwood, she said softly. He flinched at the formal address, but gave a faint nod. Goodbye, Elena. As he left, she sank back into the booth, clutching the forged letter. Bianca knows everything. She's setting traps. The ache in her chest felt unbearable, yet she knew this was the only way. Nathaniel had a life to live, a life she could never be part of. She had to walk away, protect herself, and keep Carla safe. Elena returned to the Sterling mansion with heavy steps. She half expected Bianca to confront her, but the house was eerily quiet. Slipping into her attic room, she found an envelope on the bed with her name scrawled in Bianca's sharp handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a note. I know you met with Nathaniel tonight. I arranged for him to receive that forged confession to draw you out. Consider this your final warning. If you take one more step toward him, I'll make sure you and your brother suffer. You belong to me, Elena. Don't forget it. Elena sank onto the bed, tears burning her eyes. She was trapped in Bianca's web, and any attempt to break free only tightened the snare. I have to leave. But how? She couldn't risk Carlos's healthcare. Her paycheck was vital. Days stretched into weeks. Nathaniel's engagement to Victoria was officially announced, splashed across tabloids and social media. Elena avoided reading the articles, but the headlines screamed at her anyway. Heir to Eastwood Empire engaged to perfect heiress. One evening, after tucking the children into bed, Elena found herself in the attic, the forged letter in her hands. She reread it, sickened by how closely it mirrored her own thoughts and regrets. If only I'd had the courage to speak to him sooner. She clenched her jaw. This can't continue. She began drafting her resignation letter, tears smearing the ink. She'd find a job elsewhere, even if it meant lesser pay. She couldn't endure Bianca's cruelty any longer. Yet as she wrote, she thought of Carlos's medication costs and rent. A single month without a steady paycheck could set them back disastrously. She stuffed the resignation letter in a drawer, burying her face in her hands. I'm trapped. Not long after, Carlos's health took a turn. He called Elena, voice frail and apologetic. I'm sorry, sis, but I need more money for the new treatment. Insurance isn't covering everything. Her heart plummeted. I'll figure it out, she promised, her voice tight with suppressed panic. Bianca overheard the conversation, cornering Elena afterward with a thin smile. Tough luck, huh? Perhaps I can give you an advance on your salary if you promise to be more obedient. She tilted her head. Of course, if you leave this house, that offer disappears. Elena's stomach churned. I have no choice but to stay. She accepted the blood money, swallowing her pride for Carlos's sake. One chilly morning, a package arrived for Elena, labeled only with her name. Inside was a tattered journal and a single note. I found this among my mother's things. She was a nurse. Inside, you might find resources that could help your brother's condition. The signature was a scribble that looked like a partial N. Elena's heart soared briefly. Nathaniel? She flipped through the journal, seeing references to medical studies and hospitals that specialized in advanced treatments. It was a small lifeline, a clue that there might be a better way to help Carlos without relying on Bianca's manipulations. Tears welled as she realized Nathaniel, despite his engagement and anger, had reached out in secret to help her. It only deepened her heartbreak. He cares, but he can't be in my life now. She clung to the journal, pressing it to her chest like a talisman. The day of Nathaniel and Victoria's grand engagement party arrived, splashed across every high society publication. Bianca, though invited, decided not to attend, sneering that she had better things to do. Elena was ordered to stay at the mansion, overseeing the children. She tried to push all thoughts of Nathaniel from her mind, focusing on the tasks at hand. Late that evening, as the engagement party was in full swing on the other side of town, Elena took a break in her attic room. She flipped through the nurse's journal, jotting down contact details for specialized treatment programs. Maybe there is a way out. Downstairs, the mansion was unexpectedly still. Bianca had gone out for a dinner with friends, leaving only a handful of staff. Around midnight, Elena heard a commotion at the front door, raised voices, hurried footsteps. Heart pounding, she crept down the stairs. To her shock, she saw Nathaniel Eastwood standing in the foyer, drenched from the rain, hair plastered to his forehead. Victoria Hale and several other high society guests hovered behind him, wearing formal attire, confusion on their faces. It looked like they had come straight from the engagement party. Simone and Teddy peered over the banister, eyes wide. The butler flailed, uncertain how to handle the scene. Nathaniel's gaze swept the hall, zeroing in on Elena as she stood on the steps. His expression was fierce, determined. She froze. What is he doing here? He took a step forward, ignoring the staff's protests. Elena, he said, voice echoing in the marble entryway. I read your real letter. Her mind spun. What? He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. The letter you sent me. The one you wrote just recently. His voice caught. You said you couldn't stay, that you were leaving to protect me from Bianca's threats. You confessed everything, including how you felt. Elena's jaw dropped. I didn't send a letter. She wondered if it was another forgery, but from the anguished look on Nathaniel's face, she realized something else was at play. Perhaps a staff member loyal to her had tried to intervene. Or maybe the universe was righting wrongs. She didn't know, but she saw sincerity in Nathaniel's eyes. Victoria stepped forward, face flushed with anger. Nathaniel, this is insane. We just announced our engagement. Don't humiliate me like this. He turned to her, voice steady but pained. I'm sorry, Victoria. Our families orchestrated this union, but I can't go through with it. My heart isn't in it, and it never was. She let out an outraged gasp. The other guests murmured among themselves, scandalized. Nathaniel returned his gaze to Elena, ascending the steps to stand a few steps below her, rainwater dripping from his coat. Elena, he said softly, reaching for her hand. I thought we were over, but I realized I can't marry someone else when my heart belongs elsewhere. I don't care about the lies Bianca forced on you. I only care about the person I came to know, the woman who felt real when everything else in my life was a facade. Tears blurred Elena's vision. She glanced down at their intertwined hands, her heart pounding with hope and terror. Nathaniel, you don't understand. Bianca, she'll destroy me. My brother. He squeezed her hand, voice fierce. I've already arranged for your brother's health card to be covered by my personal foundation. He'll get the best treatment possible. You don't have to stay here anymore. You're free, Elena. Her tears spilled over. A dizzying sense of relief and disbelief washed through her. But, you're engaged, she choked. Not anymore, he said, shooting Victoria an apologetic but firm look. I can't live a life of lies. Not after everything I've already been through. He turned back to Elena, voice trembling with emotion. I want to find you, the real you, away from all of this. If you'll let me. Bianca's angry voice tore through the moment. She stormed in through the front door, eyes blazing. What is the meaning of this? Nathaniel squared his shoulders. Your games are over, Bianca. I'm done playing them. Bianca let out a furious shriek. Elena belongs to me. She can't. Elena found her voice, surprising even herself. I don't belong to you, she said, tears still glistening but resolve strong. I'm leaving, Bianca. The household staff, who had gathered in the periphery, looked stunned but quietly triumphant. Bianca, sputtering with rage, lunged forward. You can't do this. I'll ruin you. Both of you. Nathaniel wrapped an arm protectively around Elena's waist, leading her down the stairs. Try if you want, he said coolly. But I doubt your family wants more scandals. He signaled to one of the waiting cars. Let's go. As they stepped into the night, paparazzi cameras flashed from the gates, capturing the dramatic scene. Elena clung to Nathaniel, heart pounding. She was leaving the Sterling mansion, for good. Freed from Bianca's tyranny, with Carlos's future secured. The entire world felt like it spun on a new axis. In the weeks that followed, Elena moved into a modest but comfortable apartment, funded by the Eastwood Foundation's emergency grant program. Carlos began a new treatment regimen at a top hospital, his spirits lifted by the prospect of recovery. Nathaniel distanced himself from the Eastwood Empire's social obligations, focusing on the philanthropic work that truly mattered to him. Though scandal erupted in the tabloids, air breaks off engagement, fleas with Nanny, he cared little for the gossip. Nathaniel and Elena spent their days quietly, away from the public glare. They talked for hours, unraveling the wounds of the past and forging a genuine connection. Gone were the glittering ball gowns, the impersonations, the manipulative threats. In their place was a fragile but real love, born from adversity and sealed with mutual understanding. One afternoon, as they strolled through a city park, a gentle breeze ruffled the leaves overhead. Nathaniel paused beneath an old oak tree, taking Elena's hand. This isn't the end, he murmured, echoing the words that once echoed in her stolen letter. It's only the beginning. Elena looked up, tears of gratitude shimmering in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. We have so much more living to do, together. And with that, they walked on, hand in hand, determined to write their story on their own terms, a story that defied the chains of power, the illusions of status, and the deceptions that once bound them. A story where love was the greatest rebellion, proving that some connections are fated to endure, even when born of lies, because the truth of the heart is too powerful to be silenced. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, kindly hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating tales. I'd love to hear from you. What stood out to you, or what lesson did you take away from this story? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, see you in the next story. With love, Zubay.